Hello. Hopefully today you're not buried in deadlines and you didn't skip breakfast. Because after hearing this story, you'll be grateful, even for a moldy piece of bread. Imagine this: you open your eyes and find yourself in Japan during the samurai era. But instead of iron armor or war horses, all you have are bare feet and a sore back. There's no war drum, only the howling wind and the smell of damp hay close to your face. You're not a warrior. You have no name. You are a dirt digger. Others train with swords. You're sent to dump human waste. And if you think this is the golden age of the samurai spirit, you're in for a rude awakening. So how do you survive in a place where every harvest season sounds like a funeral procession? And why can't you, a modern human, last even a morning here? In the next few minutes, I'll take you through a full tour of Japanese-style hell, the raw version, no filters. If you like history stories, with the aftertaste of mud and tears, hit subscribe. No pressure, but if you survive the first part, we've got more wild rides ahead. Now, turn off the lights, lower the background noise, and imagine you're lying in a straw hut. The sky hasn't lit yet, but something just crawled across your foot. Outside, dogs bark and people shout. Not robbers, just tax collectors on patrol. You've got no money, no rights either. What you do have is a hoe leaning by the door, and another day begins in an era where every dawn feels like a burial ritual. And if you're waiting for a romantic moment, sorry, we're far past anime territory. Let's begin. Before sunrise, and before you head to work on an empty stomach, you wake up on a torn mat placed directly on the cold ground. The hut is the size of a closet, fits 3 people lying shoulder to shoulder, and blocks no wind. Every breath you take carries the scent of mildew, half-burnt wood, and stray cat urine. Your back aches, not from overwork, but from uneven ground and stones stabbing your spine. The sun's not up yet, but footsteps outside already keep you from sleeping. You pull a moldy straw mat over yourself. It's not warm, just makes the mosquito buzzing more bearable. Your hair is sticky, last night's sweat hasn't dried, and something just crawled out of your collar. You swat it away without looking around here. It's best not to know what you touched. One corner of the hut leaks. Yesterday's rain turned it into a black puddle where frogs hop near your pillow. Not a real pillow, of course. You rest your head on a bundle of straw tied with old rope, once used for rice or for corpses. Every time you turn, the straw rustles and bedbugs patrol like soldiers. Your feet are scratched, toes caked in dirt, and you can't remember the last time you washed them. There's no mosquito net, only spider webs and spiders above your head beam. The person lying next to you, maybe your younger brother or someone who ducked in last night to avoid robbers. You don't ask. Around here, if someone's still breathing, they get to stay. If not, they're out, no questions. You sit up. Your spine cracks like an old wooden door forced open too fast. Outside, the rooster's crow doesn't sound like a movie. It's hoarse, broken, and more like a sick man coughing. A dog barks, either at a stranger or from hunger. Nobody knows, nobody cares. You reach for your straw sandals. One is missing. What's left are bare feet. Cold mud seeps into your skin like needles. That's how you start the day. Pain and wetness. You step outside. Smoke from nearby huts floats faintly in the morning mist, as if the village is dissolving into the air. An old woman is picking up cow dung near your home. She doesn't look at you. She knows you're no better off. You bend down to wash your face with a ladle of water from the jar. It's brown, and you pray not to swallow any. The cold doesn't wake you up. It makes you shiver and nauseous. Your hands are red and sore, not from cold, but from yesterday's bite, now swelling with pus. You take a deep breath. This morning smells like the last somewhere between wood smoke, buffalo dung, and ashes. You wonder, if this is a normal day's start, then what counts as abnormal? Last night you heard screaming. Someone was stabbed over dried fish. But this morning, everyone acts like nothing happened. You don't ask. You know asking won't change anything. It'll only earn you an enemy. You reach for your straw sandals. One is missing. What's left are bare feet. Cold mud seeps into your skin like needles. That's how you start the day. Pain and wetness. You step outside. Smoke from nearby huts floats faintly in the morning mist, as if the village is dissolving into the air. An old woman is picking up cow dung near your home. She doesn't look at you. She knows you're no better off. You bend down to wash your face with a ladle of water from the jar. It's brown, and you pray not to swallow any. The cold doesn't wake you up. It makes you shiver and nauseous. Your hands are red and sore, not from cold, but from yesterday's bite, now swelling with pus. You take a deep breath. This morning smells like the last somewhere between wood smoke, buffalo dung, and ashes. You wonder, if this is a normal day's start, then what counts as abnormal? Last night you heard screaming. Someone was stabbed over dried fish. But this morning, everyone acts like nothing happened. You don't ask. You know asking won't change anything. It'll only earn you an enemy. A child runs past you barefoot, pants torn to the knees. He smiles for no reason. You don't smile. You walk straight to the pig pen, not to feed, but to collect straw for tonight's bedding. You mutter something, not a prayer, just hoping today won't be worse than yesterday. But deep down, you know it will be worse. You just don't know how yet. Light begins to seep through the bamboo cracks. You can see now, the ground looks muddier in daylight. You hunch over. A simple move, but one that reminds you you're no longer young. A wooden gong sounds from the headman's house, the signal to start the workday. You haven't eaten, but there's nothing to eat. Hunger has become familiar. You think about grabbing your shirt, but decide not to. It's still wet from rain 3 days ago. You look up. Nothing but gray clouds and birds flying toward a direction that's not yours. You sigh, not out of despair, but because you're alive. And here, that's already a lot. Your stomach churns, not from emotion, but because your guts are ready to revolt. And like every morning, the first question is, where should I go today? You walk around the back of the house, avoiding dark puddles you'd rather not identify. There's a wet pile of straw, your usual meditation spot. No walls, no doors, nothing remotely resembling privacy. You squat down, but before anything happens, you hear sniffling a few meters away. You turn, your neighbor is sitting, facing you with a completely blank stare. Both of you know what's happening, but no one says a word. Because here, making eye contact while pooping isn't weird. It's daily life. You turn away, pretend to look at the crooked bamboo, and carry on. The smell needs no description. It's directly under you. You have no toilet paper, just a few wild leaves, the only things not grown to be eaten. After wiping, you wonder, did I just clean myself or smear something worse? Wind sneaks through the bamboo cracks, bringing cold and the smell you wish to forget. A dog runs past. It grabs something near you and dashes off. You don't want to know what it just ate. Done, you stand, adjust your waistband, and kick some straw to cover your work. No one cleans that spot. There's no sanitation crew, no flush water. If lucky, rain might help. If not, heat will remind everyone to steer clear. You head back inside and wash your hands with water from the clay jar, the same jar used to rinse vegetables. You think for a moment, then decide to forget that thought. There's a public bath in the village, but it only opens when it rains. Everyone goes to the stream, strips down, lines up, like fish drying in the sun, but human. No curtains, no walls. First come, first serve, to claim the spot with fewer rocks. You bathe next to an old man shaving with a rusty iron blade. Each stroke comes with a loud, ow. You're trying to scrub your heels, where white mold has settled since last month. A kid just peed right next to you and grinned. You nod at him. No point scolding. It won't make the water cleaner. After that festival bath, you head home cold, damp, and stinking in a peculiar way. At night, if you don't make it to the straw pile, you use the emergency clay pot, right by your bed. You once dropped that pot. You don't want to talk about it. In summer, the stench wakes you in the middle of the night. In winter, the urine freezes into a layer of ice. Looks like malt candy, but don't be fooled. You once dreamed of an automatic toilet, with doors and music. Then you woke up with your hand resting on a jar of dirty water. You smiled bitterly. Even dreams here don't smell good. People live like this, and they think, at least I didn't die from squatting wrong. Once, someone stepped behind the house in the dark and stepped on a snake. No one remembers his name. Since then, everyone goes earlier, while it's still light out. And that's why you learn to look others straight in the eye and feel nothing at all. Your stomach growls. Not the kind of hungry growl, but the eat itself soon kind. You step into the kitchen, which is really just a dirt corner with 3 rocks and a blackened pot. Inside is a porridge that's been stewing for 3 days, thick as glue, faintly smelling of ashes. No meat, no vegetables, but there are a few grains of rice still in husk. The pounding was half-hearted. You ladle a scoop, blow gently, then taste. It's hot, but not delicious hot. More like burns your throat hot. You try to swallow. Each spoonful feels like it pulls a sigh from deep inside your chest. A fly lands on the bowl's rim. You flick it away and instantly forget. The main flavor is ash. The side note is a strange tang, like rust. You don't ask why. Asking won't change the fact you still have to eat. Your mother adds a special dish. Pickled radish that's turned a weird gray. You sniff it. Not rotten, but it definitely shouldn't smell like mop water. The first bite slides down your throat like bargaining with your stomach. No chopsticks. You use your hands. And no one washes hands before eating. You glance around, seeing your little sister licking her bowl. Not because it's tasty, but because today she's full. Your father stays silent. Not because he's chewing, but because he hasn't had anything to say in years. On the table sits a gourd of water. You open the lid, pour. It's pale brown, as murky as poorly strained cassava tea. You sip. Your mouth feels drier after. You don't know why. Sometimes you think, if we sold this water to the enemy, maybe they'd surrender from stomach pain. The bowl of porridge nears empty, but fullness never comes. Only an empty belly and a heavy head. You force a smile, the kind you make when you know you'll be eating this again by evening. A bit of husk is stuck in your teeth. You try to dig it out with your nail. Doesn't work. You tell yourself, if breakfast is the start of a good day, then today needs extra prayers. Once you dreamed of eating a warm steamed bun. You woke up biting into a raw yam. You didn't cry. Tears are a luxury, and thirst is scarier than hunger. Villagers say the family across the path once had eggs for breakfast. 7 years ago. You're not sure it's true, but that rumor alone is enough to spark lifelong grudges. The smell of cold porridge rises like a reminder. Being alive means having to keep swallowing. A neighbor's child choked on a stone in his rice. His mother just patted his back and went back to work. No one dies from breakfast, but breakfast reminds people they haven't died yet. You stand up and place your bowl on the ground. Clicks, like it's groaning too. Outside, the sun begins to peer in, but it brings no warmth, just sharpens your hunger. You glance back at your meal and quietly ask, what even is this menu? No one answers. No one names the things that make them feel ashamed. If this is called breakfast, then the word eat is being insulted. You walk out of the kitchen. The bitterness in your mouth remains, unsure if it's from the porridge or the thoughts. A breeze brings over the smell of your neighbor's food, identical to yours. You want to gag, but you hold back because there's nothing left in you. A cat walks by and glances at you. It's not hungry. You are. You take a breath and tell yourself, well, being alive means getting to eat. But deep down, you wish you could just die. Right after lunch, you step out of the house, pulling at your half-dried shirt, the back still damp like it was licked by a cow. The clothes you're wearing are from last Lunar New Year. Today is mid-September. Never washed. Not out of laziness, but because there's barely enough clean water to drink. Every movement makes your shirt rustle like sandpaper scraping skin. Your pants are torn at the knees, patched with rope, forming a lumpy knot that makes walking awkward. You touch your collar. It's stiff like wood, hardened from old sweat. Brown stains on it, Maybe dirt, soy sauce, or fish blood. Maybe all three. You have no other clothes. Your wardrobe is a nail hammered into the wall. Every morning, you pick the only option, because there isn't another one. You once tried washing your shirt with wood ash. It ended up smelling like spoiled sticky rice cake. A mouse once chewed a hole in your sleeve. You stitched it up and wore it again. Your belt is a dried banana rope, hardened, but at least it keeps your pants up. No shoes. Your feet carry cracks, blisters, and dried blood from scraped rocks. Dried mud clings from ankle to shin. You don't bother washing, it'll just stick again. You feel itchy, not sure if it's the fabric or what's living underneath. You scratch your back. A small lump falls to the ground. You don't pick it up. Something rattles in your collar when you bend down. Might be lice eggs, might not. The neighbor kid used to flick lice like marbles. He was really good at it. You once saw someone catch an entire nest of fleas off the back of his neck. Everyone clapped. You weren't disgusted. You just felt familiar. When it's sunny, your shirt smells like someone's boiling straw inside it. But no one complains, because everyone smells the same. Village meetings are the same. The burnt fabric odor mixed with skin marinated in ashes. Lice don't discriminate. They live more fairly than people. Some say shaving your head helps, but no one owns a sharp blade. You once burned your shirt to kill fleas. Lost a sleeve, kept the itch. The lining inside is worn so thin you can see through it. Doesn't matter, people have seen through each other for years. You heard some places call this traditional clothing. Here it's just the only clothing. When it rains, the fabric clings like a snail shell. When dry, it stiffens like oiled paper. Every step feels like tiny fingers scratching from the inside. You've scratched until you bled. And the next day, scratched the same spot again. Like instinct. Once, you left the shirt out to dry. 5 bees built a nest in the sleeve in 3 days. You wore it again. No one said anything. You didn't either. Everyone's busy surviving. Sometimes you look at your reflection in a puddle and don't recognize yourself. Not because you've changed, but because you never knew what you looked like before this. Someone once asked if you remembered the feeling of being clean. You couldn't answer, not because you forgot, but because you grew up with the smell of sweat and sour mud. You lift your arm, sniff your collar, and shiver at your own scent. But you still wear it, because it's cold, and because there's nothing else. And so you keep living inside a moldy, rough shell no one wants to touch. Your mouth is dry, not from thirst, but because your right molar has been throbbing for 3 days. You don't know when it started, but now every chew makes your whole body shudder. Feels like someone's jabbing a needle in your gum and twisting it with every movement. You press your cheek gently and immediately see stars. No dentist, no anesthesia, no mirror, just fingers and despair. The village elder once said, "Poke the tooth with a thorn to distract the pain." You tried. Now your tooth hurts. And your tongue too. Someone suggested stuffing it with ash. You did. The next day, your face swelled like spoiled dough. Another said, "Gargle salt water." But you have no salt, and the water isn't clean. You sit curled up, head down, mouth shut, like guarding a secret with roots. The pain reaches your temples. You hear your heartbeat pounding in your gums. Chewing is a luxury. You just swallow and hope it all goes down without biting. Each morning, you lean into the stream to wash your face and see red leaking into the water. One time, you jumped when you spat out something hard, a chunk of tooth. You didn't scream. You had no energy left to scream. A child in the village once died after 3 days of cheek swelling. No one knew exactly why. They said he was weak. Truth is, he just didn't have antibiotics. You heard other places can treat teeth. But the road is long, and everyone's too busy staying alive. You once saw a man pull his own tooth out with a hammer and chisel. He survived, but never spoke again. You think about it, then push the thought away, because you don't have a hammer. You chew greens like biting nails. Each bite is a gamble with survival. The pain doesn't make you cry, it just slows you down. And here, slow is dangerous. Someone once said, "Toothache is no big deal," but here, small things kill. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve, knowing the bloodstain will stay forever without soap. You breathe through your mouth, but even breathing hurts, cold air touching exposed nerves. At night, you lie on your side, searching for the least painful position. None exist. You hope by morning the tooth falls out, or you fall before it does. No one in the village has all their teeth after 25. Just gums and silence. You once dreamed of smiling, woke up clutching your face, only pain and blood. In this place, smiles have no value. Teeth don't either. Pain is the only language left. In the misty dawn, you head to the field, clutching your hoe and unfinished sleep. The ground is soaked, freezing, slicing through bare feet like a warning. You bury your head and work, not out of passion, but because there's no other choice. Your hands go numb before the rice takes root, and your back bends deeper into the mud. No breaks. No one waits for you to breathe. Someone collapses in the field. A blink later, everything continues as if nothing happened. Health isn't a topic here, just something to barely get through the day. Before the sun rises, your hands are already scraped raw, your shoulders burning from water trips. Rain means planting. Sun means harvesting. Storm means weeding. There's no bad weather, only unfinished fields. A rushed midday meal, a handful of cold rice and some greens soaked in ashes. The bitterness hasn't faded yet, but you bend down again like your stomach doesn't exist. Each day repeats itself, just like the wooden gong marking village hours. You once tried counting how long until a break, then laughed, here breaks mean burial. Once you had a fever, but still went to the field, vision blurry, head spinning. Rice won't plant itself. The 9-year-old neighbor carries buckets taller than himself, no complaints, no eye contact. You look at him, remembering when you were that small too. Only now your feet are hardened. No one taught you to farm. You were born into it like a shadow stuck to the ground. The oldest in the village is 70, but no one dares call it retirement. An old lady still sweeps straw every morning with a broken broom, not out of joy, but because survival demands movement. People say labor is glory. Here, it's a sentence lasting as long as your life. You don't know holidays, no office hours. The sun is your clock, harvest your calendar. Someone broke an arm, still bandaged up and weeded with the other. Pain doesn't stop anyone. It just makes steps a bit slower. A man died during harvest. His family kept collecting rice like the body wasn't even cold. You weren't shocked. That's just how things go around here. Once a sickle sliced your leg. Blood trickled into the soil. The rice still grew green. No one ever asked what you wanted to be. Here, the job chooses you by the calluses on your hands. Someday you'll collapse, someone else will finish your row. That's it. No name carved, no headstone, no speech. Just a ragged shirt hanging near the stove, and a shallow dent in the dirt where you used to rest your back. You once wished for rain, not to rest, but to work in cool water. Your only dream isn't wealth. It's to bend over and pull weeds with less pain. Some days you can't remember if you've eaten, too tired to taste anything. You used to measure time by seasons. Lately, you count it by recurring pain. Each morning, your hands no longer straighten fully, but you still go to work. One time you sat in the field, leaning on your hoe, eyes to the sky, realizing you were just like unbloomed rice. You stood up because everyone else did. Around here, collapsing is the only break. On the way home, your head hangs down not from shame, but because your neck can't lift after 10 hours straight. Passing a puddle, your reflection is blurry, not from light, but because there's nothing left to recognize. You rinse your hands briefly, lean your hoe against the wall, and tell yourself, tomorrow starts again. The women in the village wake the earliest and sleep the latest, but no one calls them heroes. They don't wear swords like samurai, nor armor. Only cracked hands and backs hunched by the years. A mother who gave birth yesterday ties cloth over her belly and heads to the field to spread manure. No one babysits. No one calls it unusual. The baby is placed in a bamboo basket, lying in the sun, barely shaded with a damp cloth. Cry if it cries, sleep if it sleeps. Whether it survives, only heaven knows. Women farm, wash clothes, cook, chop wood, mend shirts, soothe kids, and return to the fields. No holidays, no me time, no words of thanks. They're called the strong backbone, but here they're also the front line. If a child is sick, the mother still plants rice. The child gets a scarf and is left with a 7-year-old sibling. A girl is married off at puberty. Her dowry is 2 sacks of rice and a rooster. She cries on her wedding night. No one cares. The next morning, she still has to haul water. The village elder had 5 children. 3 starved to death, 2 vanished during wartime. She still collects firewood, because doing nothing means thinking, and thinking hurts. A 3-year-old is tied to her mother's back while she harvests. Each sickle swing passes inches from the child's feet. A 6-year-old girl knows how to start a fire, stir ashes, and cook porridge without burning it. At 8, she's tasked with guarding the stove while the family works, and knows how to suppress hunger. At 10, she carries water across 3 hills. Every time she slips, her mother cries quietly. Boys aren't better off. At 5, they lead buffalo. At 7, they glean rice. By 12, they work like grown men. No games, no recess, no such thing as childhood. A child once played jump rope with a fish-drying rope. It hit her eye, blinding one side. No one scolded. Adults only said, if she had worked instead, that wouldn't have happened. One child spilled the family's only water bucket. No porridge that night. The child wasn't beaten, but from the next day on, he never dared run again. The youngest always eats last, or not at all. When everyone's done, the youngest licks the bowls not from hunger, but to feel what eating is like. One baby died at 3 months old, too cold, and the clothes too thin. His mother sat silently all day. That evening, she still went to the river to wash clothes like usual. Not because she's strong, but because crying doesn't help anything. Children here learn silence early, and how not to ask questions that make adults sad. Once, a child asked, "Why are we poor?" and got slapped hard. Not because the question was wrong, but because no one had an answer. Each harvest season leaves more girls drained, more boys sleepless from malaria. Yet all must get up, walking on feet that are never allowed to stop. But he didn't quit. No one pays for sitting still. Someone pulls bull carts for hire, 10 kilometers a day, hills, heat, all for a meal of hard rice. These people aren't remembered by name, only by what they push, carry, or are tied to. A child weaving baskets went blind at 11. Her back hunched since first grade from leaning too long. Someone makes cakes, but never gets to eat one. Each slice takes a piece of her finger. The flour in the wounds itches for a week. The person who boils water for the public bath often gets blisters when they can't lift the lid in time. No one compensates. No one apologizes. But the pot still needs fire tomorrow. A sculptor lost everything when the Lord changed faith. He hugged his unsold statues and jumped into a well. Not all jobs die from exhaustion. Some die from being forgotten. Someone once wished to be a farmer. At least I'd smell earth, not blood. But after switching jobs, they realized, nowhere here lets you breathe without paying a price. You've heard people say, every job holds a life. Here, that life is short, silent, and dissolves in stench. Those still standing keep working. Those who fall are covered with straw, forgotten after 2 harvests. Life doesn't care if your job is noble or low. It only cares who's still breathing and who's stopped. Winter here isn't romantic white snow. It's a cold that cuts to the bone, sharp enough for your teeth to chatter audibly. You wake up with a layer of frost on your hair, thin like a sheet of fogged glass. Your breath turns to smoke, but not enough to warm your trembling hands. There's no fireplace, just a few damp sticks barely burning, filling the room with smoke. Every time the wind blows, the bamboo walls shake, letting in cold like knives on your face. You curl up in a torn straw mat. It blocks wind, but not warmth. At night, your legs go numb until you're not sure they're still part of your body. Someone lost fingers just from falling asleep in the icy wind. You're not surprised. You just remind yourself, as long as it's not your life, Anything else is expendable. Each morning, you have to smash the ice in the water jar just to get a bit to wash your face. Cracks in your hands bleed when you move, as if your body's protesting the winter. The only warmth you feel is from the mud underfoot before it freezes. And when summer comes, you think maybe winter was more bearable. Summer sun burns your head like an oven, and you don't know if you're in a rice field or a furnace. Sweat soaks your clothes but never dries, the air too thick and muggy. Mosquitoes and flies swarm every scratch on your arms, leaving stinging, itchy pain. A fly falls into your drinking water. You fish it out, blow gently, and still have to drink it. You fan yourself with a torn hat, but the wind isn't strong enough to carry away the stench of your body and the mud. Villagers grow faint under the sun. Sit too long under a thatch roof and the smoke chokes you. Outside, the sun scorches. Inside, it suffocates. There's nowhere to hide. Skinny children run by, backs shiny with sweat, fall into mud and still laugh. You look at them and wonder, how do they still have the strength to smile? Summer also brings the stink of trash, dead fish, and animal carcasses by the fields. Every time the wind shifts, it feels like someone hurls a bucket of manure smell at your face. Summer nights aren't better. Mosquitoes and flies switch shifts, biting your limbs nonstop. You lie down, listening to the buzzing like an orchestra of torture in your ear. Some nights, it's so hot you'd rather lie in the fields, praying for rain to soak you. But summer rain isn't kind. It brings mold and slugs crawling into the house. You saw a snake slither across the thatch roof last night, but were too tired to scream. The heat spoils food by midday. You eat quickly before it changes color. Water in the jar turns as warm as dishwater. Drinking it feels like swallowing heat. One day, you pressed your face to the ground, seeking coolness from the mud. But you jumped up. The mud was crawling with worms like the place hadn't hit peak misery yet. Sitting under the thatch, the heat rises like from a giant charcoal stove. You pant, but breathing in only draws more sweat and humidity. No season is kind. Winter kills you with cold. Summer wears you down with every breath. You think of leaving, but everywhere is the same. Every place has its own way to grind you down. The old say, endure it, the season will change. But changing seasons just means changing kinds of pain. You look around and see everyone quietly accepting it, because not accepting changes nothing. You close your eyes and wonder, maybe that's why they call it getting through the day and not living for yourself. You think you're alone, but you've always had company, always sticking very close. Every night you sleep with dozens of tiny creatures, all kinds, all legs, none of them invited. Lice hide in your hair, occasionally crawling to your ear like they're checking the battlefield. Fleas nest in your collar, quietly sucking blood, making your neck itch like someone's playing a thorn flute. Bedbugs live in your straw mat, showing up just when you're starting to feel slightly comfortable. Rice bugs crawl in the rice, stink bugs fall from the thatch roof, sometimes straight onto your face. One time, you tasted something odd in your porridge. Turned out something was swimming in circles. You didn't spit it out. You chewed and swallowed, knowing this wasn't the first time. While scratching your head, you once picked out a louse the size of a bean. You put it down and watched it scurry off. No one screamed, no one flinched, just another normal thing, like sneezing or nodding off. One day, you found an ant crawling from your pant leg up to your chest. You didn't react, neither did it. Bugs are part of life here, like dust, like wind, like hunger. People don't ask, do you have lice? They ask, where do you itch the most? An old man once bragged about catching 7 fleas in one go. Everyone gasped in admiration. A neighbor's kid plays crush the bug with fingernails, counting carcasses to win. He's very good at it. You once burned your shirt to kill all the lice, only for the itching to return the next day like nothing ever changed. You've scratched until you bled, but the relief afterward almost made you feel grateful. Itching here isn't temporary. It's part of your biological rhythm. Villagers say, if you're not itching, you're probably running a fever. You go to bed knowing you'll wake up with at least 2 new spots to scratch. Someone once said, lice are a sign of life. You didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Bedbugs bite in lines. The more bites, the more work you've done. One day, you took off your shirt and found a line of lice eggs like a necklace of rice grains. You brushed them off gently and put the shirt back on. Not out of indifference, but because there's nothing cleaner to wear. Someone suggested shaving everyone's heads. But no one dared. Hair is the only thing helping against the cold. You dreamed of bathing clean, shampooing thoroughly, wearing scented clothes, then woke up as a bug crawled across your forehead. You once tried to rid yourself of lice in a day, but after a single nap, they returned. They follow you through seasons, through rainstorms and fevers. They never abandon you, and when your back breaks out, your neck swells, and your head itches like madness, you know you're still alive. Here, life isn't measured by heartbeats, but by how many times you scratch in a day. You don't live to dream. You live just to not collapse today. Every morning, you don't wake because you want to, but because you have to. No one asks what you want. Everyone already knows nobody gets what they want. Villagers move like shadows, never rushing, never stopping, never looking up. Everyone carries some pain, but no one has time to complain. You've heard the word hope, but it feels like a word for somewhere else, someone else. Someone said, to live is to have a reason. Here, to live is to not freeze to death in the field. Each day feels like a failed draft, copied over in the same tired handwriting. You walk, you work, you swallow, you lie down. Like a clock no one bothers to wind. One time, you stood in the middle of the field and realized, no one will remember you if you disappear. A mother carries a bundle of firewood heavier than her frail frame. Her 7-year-old daughter limps beside her. Neither says a word. They know, if they're still alive, tomorrow must continue. In this place, love isn't shown. It lies quietly under each hand, reaching to pull the other from the mud. No one writes poems about them. No medals, no statues. But if one stops, everything collapses. They know, so they keep walking. On tired feet, in red eyes, they live unseen, because everyone is too busy surviving. If you don't farm, it doesn't mean life is easier. It just means you get dirty in a different way, and die a different death. A fabric dyer goes to bed with dark purple hands, not from dye, but from skin blistered beyond recognition. They say that dye is beautiful, but no one asks how long the dyer survives. Across the way is the blacksmith shop. Hot, suffocating, and the fire doesn't care whether it burns metal or flesh. Someone forgot to pull up a sleeve. Since then, he only has half a left arm. Fishmongers live with animal guts, flies, and a stench so strong even dogs leave. In summer, their skin breaks out from constant contact with rotting blood. Some brew liquor, inhaling thick fermentation all day, drunk without drinking. But not everyone's lucky. One slipped into a pot of boiling syrup and vanished after a single scream. Papermakers work with ash, bark, dirty water, and glue so sticky it coats their hands all year. No gloves, no masks, just a stench that never leaves their skin. A charcoal burner so thin you can see the fire through him. He once coughed blood, but kept going because smoke's easier to breathe than hunger. A mat weaver got a thorn in his nail, it got infected, and they amputated a joint. Tomorrow continues, whether you're still breathing or not. You're not sad. Sadness is a luxury. You just feel cold and empty. Sometimes you look at the sky, not to pray, just to see something that isn't dirty. You once tried talking to yourself, but after a few lines, even you stopped replying. Your shadow stretches across dry ground, looking like someone who has nothing left to lose. One rainy day, you didn't take cover. You let yourself get soaked, because being dry wasn't more comfortable. Someone said, enduring is strength. Here, it's mandatory. A woman sits in the courtyard, eyes empty, not open, not shut. No one asks. A child fainted from fever. His father left, not from cruelty, but because the field needs people. You once helped an old woman who had fallen by the stream. She said, thanks, but don't get too close to anyone. Bonds here are fragile, because loss hides behind every season. You don't remember the last time you laughed, No one's waiting for a happy story. Someone fled to the mountains, taking only silence. No one looked. Here, disappearance isn't news. It's part of life's rhythm. You once dreamed of another world with full meals, clean clothes, a dry bed. But when you woke, the bucket dragged away the dream, leaving nothing. The old don't talk much. Maybe they've run out of words. Each nod means, still alive, still nodding. You once closed your eyes at noon, thinking you'd napped. But you just stood still, too tired to fall. An old woman said, "Death isn't scary. What's scary is living too long with nothing to wait for." You know she's right, but you still carry water, like every day. Every step carries no hope, only duty. They call it life. To you, it's a suspended sentence with no release date. You didn't choose to stay, but you had nowhere to go. Someone asked, "If you were reborn, would you choose this place again?" You didn't answer, not because you hesitated, but because no one gave you a choice to begin with. You lie on the damp straw mat. It's not soft, but at least it doesn't scream. Night falls. You hear your family's breaths, like ghosts who haven't left yet. You close your eyes, not to rest, but so you don't have to see anymore. Maybe you'll still be here tomorrow. Maybe not. But morning will come anyway. No one paints the future here. The present is thick enough to blur everything ahead. You once stared into a murky bowl of water and thought, "That's me, in another form." A child looked at you, then turned away. To them, you're just another adult surviving. You swallow, bitter, but easier than saying anything. Sometimes you feel like a weed, you grow where you land, and wilt when told. But unlike weeds, you know you're running dry, and still must keep moving. No one will tell your story. No history book, no tombstone, no verse. But you still carry water, still plant rice, still gather wood, still silent. Because here, you don't live to be remembered. You live not to be erased too soon. And you've done that by enduring one more day. The sun's long gone behind the bamboo, but the work's not done. You put your hoe away, bend to grab sandals soaked in mud up to the ankles. Each step home feels like dragging a lead-filled body. Heavy, mute. The evening breeze is light, but sharp enough to sting your skin. No one speaks on the way home. The whole village walks like shadows, the earth used to their silent feet. Through a thatch roof, you hear an elder's cough, dry, steady, long, like a countdown. A dog barks at the forest. No one turns. No one wonders. Home again. You rinse your feet in murky water, ash, sand, and maybe hope. You hang your shirt, still as wet as when you put it on this morning. Dinner is thin porridge again, but cold now, and the bowl chipped another piece. You eat slowly, not to enjoy, but because your tooth still aches. Every chew scrapes pain, but you still swallow. A child dozes beside you, gripping a wooden spoon. No one wakes him. Everyone knows. Sleep is the only thing without consequences. An old woman sits in the kitchen corner. Firelight shows her tendons, like strings pulled too tight. You don't talk, not from anger, just because there's nothing left to say. Outside, insects hum a background tune, as dull as a communal sigh. You lie down on the straw mat, cold, hard, sharp with broken stalks. You don't move. Every turn stabs like something inside just snapped. The ceiling's stained with old smoke, blotches like footprints from days that will never return. Someone coughs, then silence. No one checks. No one moves. You look up, then shut your eyes. Not to dream, just hoping the mosquitoes don't wake you. Tonight, you don't bother pulling up the blanket. It's damp and useless. You hear your own breath, thin and tired, like a forgotten song. No one will remember what you did today. Neither do you, only that you didn't die. One more day survived. No applause. No well done. Just silence lying beside you like an old friend. You don't hope tomorrow will be better, just that it won't be worse. Your hands ache, legs heavy, eyes droop, stomach still empty, but your heart still beats. Here, that's the only thing that counts as being alive. You close your eyes and wonder, if I don't open them again, would anyone know? The answer doesn't matter. because either way, people will still go to work. Everyone here is a gear in an old machine called survival. If one gear breaks, the rest must keep turning, no pause allowed. You breathe again, a little deeper, not to live, just to see if you're still breathing. Outside, footsteps pass by, slow, steady, unstopping. You know, that's just someone who finished surviving their day too. The ceiling is still there. The wind still blows. The dog still barks somewhere far. This world doesn't change for you. It just keeps moving, whether you're in it or not. And today, you're still here. That's all. No more, no less. On a nameless day, you survived in a way no one saw. So, you've lived a full day in Sengoku, Japan, in the rawest meaning of still breathing. No magic sword, no glory, no slow-motion shots in golden rice fields. Just mud, sweat, lice, hunger, and sighs instead of greetings. You didn't save the world. You couldn't even save yourself from a bedbug. No star-crossed love, no tearful dialogue. The only thing bothering you all day was your waistband and that swollen molar. If this is the past you once romanticized through movies, my condolences. You fell in love with an old painting and forgot it was painted in blood and dung. Now, feel free to sit up, take a breath and ask, did I really want to go back there? Maybe you still do, if you're looking for an emergency weight loss plan, or if you're bored enough to experience dying slowly in full detail. But if it's just because modern life feels too stressful, remember, no one in this video got to choose how they lived. They just did one thing each day, survive long enough to see sunset. And you, with Wi-Fi, hot water, and a soft bed, you've already won. Don't ask for straw. Next time you complain about no milk in the fridge, remember you once ate husk porridge. Next time you get one mosquito bite, remember you once slept with a lice dynasty. And if one day you say, I wish I lived in the past, replay this video from the part where you scratched your head and found a pea-sized louse. Now, turn off the lights, pull up your blanket, and congratulations, you just survived a historical illusion. Oh, if you're not asleep yet, stay tuned for the next story. It's just as wild, I promise. Ha ha ha. Hello, how are you today? This is the channel for souls who love mythology, stories from the past, and sometimes even mysteries. And today, I'll take you into Greek mythology. But let me warn you, not every god is a handsome hero with muscles riding a white horse, haha. Some of them aren't much different from us. Tonight, we'll talk about someone no one wants to talk about. Irene, a name even the gods pretend they've never heard. And if you've never heard of him, don't worry. They did that on purpose. Because Irene is the forgotten son of Hisus, the crippled blacksmith god who was thrown out of Olympus like a defective tool. Hisus was born from fire, molten iron, and broken nails, not from sunsets or golden light. And Irene, he was the result of a night when Hisus couldn't control his hammer or his heart. More precisely, he couldn't control his lust for a mortal woman. No one foresaw Irene's arrival. No prophecy, no strange star, just a cry, drowned out by hammer strikes. He wasn't laid in a golden cradle. It was a basket of cold coal rags next to greasy cloths. While other gods had prime time on mythology TV, Irene didn't even have a student ID photo. He grew up down below, where there was no light, no teacher, and barely anyone who cared. And now, this is where we begin his story. But wait, turn off the lights first. Seriously, tonight will be long. Turn on a fan, or play some fake rain if you like, and find the warmest spot in bed. Don't expect miracles, but don't be surprised if your heart skips a few beats in the middle of this story. If the storytelling style suits your taste, leave a like. And if you really enjoy it, go ahead and subscribe, no pressure. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is now. Now then, let's begin the story the gods didn't want you to hear. Irene, the abandoned child. Alright, so we've met Irene, our main character, the child hidden like a teenage diary secret of the gods. Now it's time to talk about his father, Hisus. And wow, what a mess this one is. Hisus is the god of forges, leads wars, and apparently also invented irresponsibility. His name sounds like someone mashed up Hercules and Hephaestus, then hit shuffle on the beta version of mythology. He once loved immortal Callista, the best blacksmith in Miami Bay. She even taught a few gods how to forge armor that doesn't explode when touched by fire. They met in the forge. Sparks flew not just from iron but from their eyes. One night, after a few glasses of black god wine, they, did what grown-ups do. Then Hisus vanished. No address, no contact. If there were Facebook or Twitter, he'd probably have blocked her. He returned to Olympus like he'd never loved anyone. Because responsibility is something gods tend to forget at home. Callista was different. She couldn't forget. Especially after the morning sickness the next day hit her hard. While the gods held conferences in the clouds, she raised a child on burnt bread and the sound of hammering through the night. Irene grew up in the forge, not because he liked fire, but because his mother had no other choice. And Hisus? What did he do? He made a sword that could split a chariot, then posted it on the Olympus wall with the caption, "Work hard, burn harder." No one asked, "Hey, what about the kid down on Earth?" And that's exactly the problem. Irene had no throne, no prophecy, no magical mentor to teach him runes. He had soot. He had coughing fits from smoke. And a question that followed him through childhood. Mom, who am I? And Callista, a woman who should have been immortalized in myth, could only sigh, "You're the son of the god who's very good at disappearing, especially from responsibility." Irene had no magic, but he had memory, and memory sticks like the fat under armor. He remembered every time he was forgotten, every condescending look from scrap metal dealers. He remembered the mocking laughs whenever someone said, "Child of a god," without saying his name. He remembered what it felt like to belong nowhere, not quite mortal, not quite divine. And maybe that's what forged the Irene we see today. Not a savior, not a demigod, just a person, born among iron, forged by a silent father and a mother's tears. If you're waiting for a miracle, sorry. Irene had nothing but a rusty hammer. And one day he picked it up not to build but to break. And that's when this story began to change. But hey, if you think this is the part where Hisus shows up to claim his son, sorry, wrong mythos. He's busy, probably designing new armor for the next divine war. Started because someone used the wrong spoon at dinner. And Irene? He grew up in the shadow of a father who never asked, "Is he okay?" Callista stayed the same, forging weapons for lords and willpower for her son. That boy had no divine glow, but every hammer strike whispered, "Stand on your own." No prophecy, no gifts from titans. No one taught him to wield lightning. Just hammers, metal dust, and a dream that someday he'd climb Olympus. Not to reunite with family, but to, well, you guess. Irene didn't know what he'd become. He only knew he didn't want to be like his father. No abandonment, no silence, no pretending not to hear the cries from below. And you know what? It was from that place, where a forgotten child learned to hate silence, that the real story began. Some children are born amid thunder and celestial trumpets. Irene was not one of them. He was born to the groans of red-hot iron and the stench of burnt ashes. No prophetic midwives, no stars streaking across the sky. Only Callista, trembling on cold ground, her hands calloused from forging steel, now shaking from divine blood. Someone once said, "Heroes are born in pain." Yeah. They probably never saw a mortal woman gritting her teeth through childbirth behind a forge. No welcome from Olympus. No divine gift wrapped in fate. Just a newborn barely crying because ash got into his lungs before he could take his first breath. Callista held him close, not in relief, but to make sure he was still alive. No one but her knew Irene was a god's child. And if you're wondering why she never told anyone, then you've clearly never been a single mother in a world that only respects power. Callista didn't need congratulations. She needed coal that burned evenly, a steady hammer hand, and enough milk for a child who'd grow up asking questions no one would answer. As for Irene, he learned to lie still beneath the clang of iron. While other children heard lullabies, he heard the screams of fire from the furnace. While others heard fairy tales, he was told how to temper steel so it wouldn't snap in an eastern wind. Maybe you think that sounds sad. But ask Callista, would she have chosen a different path? No, because from that very day, she knew one thing. Irene didn't need a miracle, he needed will. He didn't grow up dreaming of becoming a god. He grew up wanting to be someone who never bowed, not even to those cloaked in divine glow. And that's why this story doesn't begin with wonder. It begins with silence. The silence of a child who didn't know the world had already forgotten his birth. The silence of long nights where Callista stayed awake, counting each weak breath her son took. The silence when she chose not to send him to any temple, not to lay him before any altar. You don't need them, you just need to grow strong. And if you're listening to this around midnight, curled up under a blanket with a fan blowing, then imagine this. A baby with no blanket, no fan, just a rag and his mother's breath wrapping him in courage. I don't know if you believe in myths, but I believe in Callista. Because if you'd seen how she tied broken shoes with metal wire, you'd understand why Irene never asked, "Where's my father?" Because some mothers don't need anyone beside them to become an empire. And some children, just being born is miracle enough. You know, some children are raised by wolves and become legends. Irene was raised by doubt and whispers. From the moment he could walk, fingers pointed. Not because he was cute, but because he doesn't look like anyone here. Not like his mother, not like the neighbors, and definitely not like anyone the village felt comfortable standing next to. "Whose kid is that?" they whispered behind Callista's back, but loud enough for Irene to hear. He didn't have an answer, and really no one wanted him to. While other kids learned to pray at altars, Irene learned to pretend he didn't hear the insults. He grew up between hammers, anvils, and selective silence. Callista taught him how to tend the fire, how to strike steel, and how to endure. Not just hunger, though that too, but to endure being shoved, being called freak. He once asked her, "Did I do something wrong?" Callista just shook her head and placed a hand on his chest. "No, your heart beats. That's enough." And that was enough for a child who had to grow up expecting nothing from anyone. Once, he helped put out a fire at an old man's house in the village. The man stared at him for a long while, then said nothing, just closed the door. I don't know what you'd call that, but I call it a superpower. Not Irene's, but society's. The ability to ignore kindness if it comes from an outsider. And Irene? He went home, brushed ash off his hands, and kept working. Not out of nobility, but because as long as there was work to do, there was a reason not to overthink. Callista once said, "We don't need them to believe. We just need to believe long enough to make it through." That line sounded better when she said it. Trust me, in the village, Irene was different. Outside, he was no one. He once tried leaving the mountain and living in the neighboring town. 3 days later, he returned without a word, and from then on, never mentioned it again. He had no magic teacher, no dream of becoming a hero. Only calloused hands, a slightly hunched back, and a silence growing heavier in his mind. Irene once wondered, if I'm truly the child of a god, then why am I like this? That question repeated like a hammer in the forge. Steady, relentless, without end. Have you ever felt like you were a draft of a grander idea, but left unfinished? That's how Irene lived. Unedited and unread by anyone. And Callista? She still forged iron, laughed a little less each year. But in her eyes, Irene was the one creation she never needed to fix. One day he saw a child playing with a dog. A small moment, but he stood watching for a long time. Not because he liked dogs, but because it was the first creature that didn't fear him. A few days later, the dog disappeared. People said it was taken by the god's hunters. Irene laughed. Not because it was funny, but because he was used to it. And if you're wondering, where's the magic in all this? Don't worry, it hasn't arrived yet. Because life never left room for miracles to come on time. If you're waiting for a thunderous awakening moment, a divine lightning bolt, well, I once thought that too. But no, nothing came. No lightning, no rainbow, no whisper from the heavens. just the sound of his stomach, and it growled loud enough to summon a beast from another dimension. That was the only miracle Irene ever had, that gnawing hunger. While other heroes had glowing swords or flowing capes, Irene had a piece of dried fish. Specifically, burnt dried fish, the kind you eat while trying not to think where it came from. And if you're imagining a cozy campfire, nope. It was a smoke-stained straw stove and a face covered in soot. Instead of an old mentor declaring, "You are the chosen one," Irene had a neighbor yelling, "Kid, you burned my pot again." There was no sacred hill for Irene to climb and discover his destiny. He only climbed onto rooftops to chase away hens laying eggs on his bed. And yes, that was his private room, an attic patched with dented tin and the scent of cat pee. You think a god would send a sign? Hisus didn't even send a birthday card. No cake, no candles, just cold ashes in the stove and rain tapping the roof like, "You're still not special, kid." Irene used to wait. You know, like one day someone would say, "It's time." But the only one who ever came was the tax collector. And he came to take their last half potato. Even so, Irene survived. He learned to collect ashes, light fires, boil turnip skins, and reheat soup from 2 days ago. No spells, just one survival recipe. Don't starve, don't stand out, don't believe in fairy tales. The only myth he ever heard was from a drunk claiming he fought a talking deer. Spoiler, the deer won. And Irene laughed, because at least the deer had a story to tell. And what did he have? A forgotten name and a bowl that never filled. You know that feeling, right? When you're not chosen, not called, not even on the backup list. Irene was the kind of character mythology forgot to write, because he had nothing cool to offer. No shiny helmet, no white horse, no Titan descendant claiming him. Just rough hands and a stomach that spoke louder than he did. While other kids were told tales of Olympus, Irene was told to stay away from the drunk priest at the village edge. While others learned to summon thunder, he learned to dodge rat traps and still get the bread. And you know what's funny? He pulled it off. I'm not joking. Irene knew how to survive, even when the world kept saying, "You don't belong here." Every time it rained, he didn't look up for help. He ran out to catch water because the well ran dry yesterday. It wasn't a miracle. It was logic. And sometimes logic keeps you alive. As for the gods, they were still napping. No god ever showed up. But maybe he didn't need one, because Irene got used to the silence of the stars and the familiar growl of an empty stomach. Isn't it strange? A child with divine blood, yet not one god ever mentioned his name. As if the world deliberately forgot he existed. But Irene didn't forget. He remembered every time he was ignored, every look of disdain, and the salty taste of tears over cold rice. And when you've been forgotten long enough, you start thinking of ways to make them remember. Not with miracles, but with stubborn existence. So one morning, Irene stood up, like someone with nothing left to lose, and that's when the real story began. In the village where Irene grew up, one thing was common: the chosen child. You know, the kind who glows when touching an ancient stone and suddenly speaks dragon. Or the baby girl who names the stars at birth, then prophesies, "There will be acid rain next year." And each time, the whole village would gather and chant, "Another warrior is born." But Irene, he didn't glow. He smelled like firewood smoke. Instead of prophecies, Irene sang off-key folk songs while chopping wood. And his special skill? Not tripping while carrying a firewood bundle twice his size. I know what you're thinking. Maybe that's his hidden power? Nope, just survival skills. While the chosen ones were sent to train with shamans, Irene was called to light the stove. The one time he was invited to a ritual was to carry the statue, not to lead the ceremony. And when people looked at Irene, there was no belief in their eyes. Just a wait, he's still here? Vibe. Some kids were chosen to usher in a new era. Some were promised to save mankind from eternal darkness. Irene? He was chosen to be the firewood that burned evenly through winter. A village elder once said, "His path is the silent path." Sounds deep, until you realize he meant that kid's not going to do anything significant. Every time Irene looked at the sky, he didn't see destiny, just smoke from the kitchen fire stinging his eyes. But you know what's worse? He started to believe it was true. Maybe I was born just to clean up sheep poop, Irene once muttered while carrying a bucket in the freezing wind. No one ever told him he was special. No one ever expected anything from him. And in a world full of miracles, not having one is its own kind of curse. I know you're expecting a twist, but no, not just yet, because sometimes tragedy doesn't come from what you lose, but from what you never had. We love stories about heroes starting from nothing, but Irene, he started from less than zero, not because he was unworthy, but because no one ever gave him a chance. Every child had a destiny, a legend, a symbol, a prophecy. Irene had a rope for tying firewood and a wooden bucket with a hole. I'm not saying those things are useless. I'm just saying they don't exactly scream destiny. If life were a mythological game, Irene was playing in peasant without magic mode. But don't look away, because from those ashes the real story begins. This story starts on an afternoon that smelled of dried fish, rotting wood, and thin soup. Irene was 12, old enough to stay quiet, but not old enough to understand why he should. During an argument at the market, someone called Irene the bastard without a father, and Irene, in his honest tone, replied, "I do have a father. My father is Hisus." The air froze like leftover soup overnight. Then smack, a slap like thunder from the village fortune-teller. Not because Irene lied, but because he dared put a god's name on his common lips. "You dare defile the divine by claiming to be his child?" she roared. No one objected, because in that village one thing mattered more than truth, order. And Irene, a boy with no naming ritual, no sacred guardian, had just violated that order. He was dragged out of the market like a cat that broke a pot. No one stood up for him. His mother watched from afar, basket in hand, expressionless, as if she'd expected it. That night, Irene asked her for the first time, "Who is my real father?" And she replied like speaking of a stranger, "A limping man who knew how to forge. No divine light, no destined love. Just a rainy night, a stranger, and a forbidden name." Irene didn't cry. He just stared at the kitchen fire and thought, if he's the god of fire, why isn't this flame warmer? That night, Irene dreamt of a man with iron hands forging a red-hot sword, but his face was always turned away. Irene ran to him, calling father, but the dream faded like smoke. The next morning, his mother said, "Never speak that name here again. If the god wanted to claim you, he would have." From then on, Irene understood. Some people live their whole lives with a loss they're not allowed to name. And some gods can forge weapons, but can't forge a word of acknowledgement. While other teens dreamed of victories, Irene had only one dream, and no face in it. No sacred stone bore his name. No legend told his tale. The name Hisus was worshipped far and wide, but no one dared link it to Irene, because he wasn't the son of a god. He was the typo in the god story, a crossed-out name, a question mark lost in a hymn. But the strange thing is, he still dreamed of the forge, still heard hammers on iron, fire roaring in the dark. Maybe Irene was never claimed, but that didn't stop him from hearing a call from a place he wasn't allowed to belong. And like all great stories, the first tragedy is always a slap, followed by a lifetime of asking why. I know this part is heavy, but this is Irene, a boy beaten for daring to believe in his bloodline. If you're still here, thank you for walking this far with us. Irene's story is far from over, and it only gets stranger. Leave a comment if someone ever denied your identity, because Irene knows that pain better than anyone. And don't forget to subscribe. The next chapters won't hurt less, but they'll go deeper. The fire hasn't died. The dream hasn't stopped. And somewhere, a sword is still being forged in the mist. This isn't a tale of gods. It's the tale of a forgotten boy. And we, those listening in the quiet of night, are the ones meant to pass that dream along. All right, take a deep breath. We're about to follow Irene into the darker part of the story. Irene left the village on a morning no one remembered whether it was foggy, because no one said goodbye. There was no farewell ceremony, no wreaths, no farewells, no divine trumpet echoing from the distant hills. Only a rock-hard piece of bread his mother shoved into his hand, and a silent look. Honestly, it made sense. Who would see off a kid who once got slapped for telling the truth? Irene didn't know where he was going, but leaving was better than staying and getting slapped again. He walked through forests, through fields, past the rice paddies where villagers once poured boiling water to banish spirits. Every step was Irene reminding himself, don't turn back. No one's calling your name from behind. No map, no compass, only a hazy memory of a limping god with a singing hammer. Sounds mythological, doesn't it? A powerless youth, chosen by no one, setting off to find his father. If you think heroes always start with a prophecy, not this time. No one said, Irene, you are chosen to save the world. Just Irene and the question, if he really is my father, why didn't he ever return? On the road, he passed many villages. Some spoke of Hisus. Some dared not mention the name. Irene began to realize even gods have coverage areas, and some regions are blacklisted. An old woman at a night market said, someone once saw a blacksmith step out of a volcano. When Irene asked for more, she replied, I just say that for fun. Who believes in that stuff? Then she sold him 2 boiled potatoes for double price, because he looked clueless. The more he traveled, the more Irene realized. The world is full of rumors, but short on answers. Some places worship gods out of fear. Others scoff and call it folklore. And each night, Irene lay under a strange roof, hugging his mother's hard bread, dreaming of a green flame in a forge. You know those dreams? The kind where you wake up feeling fooled, but still want to fall back asleep to dream again? And if you're thinking, here comes the turning point, sorry, not yet. Irene hadn't met a god, hadn't seen a beam of light, and still hadn't been hungry enough to eat the stone bread. That might have been the day's greatest achievement. No broken teeth yet. Once, he overheard 2 blacksmiths mention a half-god man who passed by. Irene asked, did he limp? And got stared at like a lunatic. Stories of gods always seem to get silenced just when you get interested. Like someone doesn't want you to know the truth. Or maybe the truth is too silly to share. Sometimes Irene wondered, am I going somewhere? Or just leaving a place no one wanted me in? And if that question made you pause, welcome to Irene's default state of mind. Because this grand journey had no epic soundtrack. Just a growling stomach and rain dripping down his collar. A blind prophet once told Irene, you will find your father when you stop searching. But he said that to everyone, even lost kids at the market. No one's sure if he was really blind. He kept asking people for money. The farther from the village, the clearer one truth became. No one's waiting at the end. No throne, no medal, maybe not even a father. But sometimes those not chosen go the furthest. And even without cheers, Irene kept walking. Not because of destiny, but because he had nothing left to lose. You're still here? Then you've already gone farther than anyone in his village. And that is the first step in a journey no god dared to write. One day, unremarkable, Irene reached the gates of Olympus. No greeting, no guards. You expected fire dragons? Divine soldiers? No, just a slightly ajar gate. He knocked, once, twice, then pushed it open. No one cared. The gods were busy. One was checking her mirror. One live-streamed a sacrifice. One counted followers. Irene said, I'm the son of Hisus. And immediately, someone burst out laughing like he claimed to be a flying sausage. Hisus? That limping guy in the volcano? Asked one god without looking up from lunch. A goddess added, I thought he died already? A thunder god shrugged. Don't remember any banquet inviting his kid. Irene tried again. He once loved my mother, Callista. She was a blacksmith. AAA Callista. Best toast in the South Volcano. One god slipped. I mean, who? You know that feeling? Like showing up to a class reunion and realizing No one remembers you went to that school. Irene stood among gods exchanging snake wine and taking selfies with talking swans, hoping someone would ask, "What's your name again?" But no one asked. No one cared how long he'd been standing there. He asked to speak with Hisus. A wind god turned and said, "He's not here. Not anywhere, actually." Irene asked, "What do you mean?" And got back, "I mean, he vanished, like a system update that never finishes downloading." Another god suggested, "Want to meet Hisus? Ask Sharon. Maybe he's paddling around the underworld." Irene didn't get mad. He just stood there, because these mockeries somehow made more sense than his father's silence. In one corner, a younger god whispered, "You really Hisus's kid?" Irene nodded. The god shrugged, "I once thought I was Zeus's son. Then my mom said, she drank the wrong offering." "Good luck," he patted Irene. "At least you're still searching." Irene thanked him, then walked on through halls of divine light, where only names on the list mattered. There was no list with his name, no statue that looked like him, but there was a broken statue, leg missing, tucked in a dim corner. Irene stood before it longer than usual. He didn't know why. Maybe because its right leg also bent slightly. No miracle happened, but no one chased him away either. And maybe that was already a good start. That night, Irene slept under the temple gate, beside two divine cats arguing in Old Sanskrit. When you're the son of a god no one remembers, sleeping on the porch somehow fits the theme. He dreamed of the forge again. But this time, he wasn't just watching. He was holding the hammer. And in that dream, no one asked who he was, because he was making something they couldn't. The next morning, Irene woke up and knew he had to keep going. Not to be remembered, but so he wouldn't forget. He left the temple at dawn, while the sun god was still busy checking his own brightness. On the road, an owl flew by, didn't say anything, just gave him a look. The kind that says, "Oh, you're still alive?" Irene chuckled, first time in days. Not because he was happy, but because he knew he was in the wrong place. There's a kind of silence, not being forgotten, but no longer needing to be remembered. And in that moment, Irene felt closer to the gods than ever before. Not because he was a god's son, but because, like them, he had no idea who he really was, but kept walking anyway. A kid no one ever asked the name of, now walking a mythic path, without an invitation. From now on, if anyone asked, "Who are you?" he'd say, "I'm the one who doesn't need to be remembered, just allowed to walk." And if no one believed him, that's fine. Because if gods really exist, they'd be witnesses to this journey. And if they don't, Irene shrugged. At least, he still went farther than all those who waited to be called. After many months, Irene finally stood before the gate made of white bone and black bronze, where Hisus was said to dwell. He didn't knock because the gate was already open. That was strange. Even stranger, no guards at all. Irene stepped in, expecting war horses, the clang of forges, and sacred firelight. But the first thing he heard was a groan from the god trying to crack his back using a stone bench. "Who's there?" Hisus asked without turning, his voice raspy, like someone with a cold who just smacked their head on a sacred axe. "I'm Irene," the boy said, steadying his voice. "Your son and Callista's." A long silence, then a choking sound, like someone either gagged or looking for a polite rejection. "Sorry, wrong person," said Hisus. Irene frowned. "You seriously don't remember my mother?" Callista. Hisus repeated like flipping through a mental address book full of typos. Maybe. I've passed through many villages." "You stayed for 3 nights, then left," Irene said. "You left her. And me." 3 nights don't count," Hisus shrugged. "I spent an entire winter with someone named Lyria. She said she had a kid too." Irene smiled faintly, not happy. The kind of smile that says, "Ah, got it now. So, I mean nothing to you." "Not exactly," Hisus said, looking up for the first time. "You seem spirited. Not everyone dares to come here." "Because I'm human," said Irene. "I came because I need to know. Not because I'm chosen to. Hisus nodded, like deciding on a bland lunch. Fair, but I don't need more kids. To be honest. Irene was silent, staring at him, not with hate, more like, thanks, now I know for sure. You can reject me, he said, but I'm still your son, paper or no paper. Hisus snorted. Paper what? It's okay, Irene shrugged. I'll leave. No demands? Don't want a weapon, divine power, or at least a good luck blessing. No, Irene said. I just wanted the truth, and I got it. He turned his back. His legs still trembled, but his steps were steady. Behind him, Hisus sighed, maybe because of his back pain, or maybe because of a son he would never understand. The door closed behind Irene, slowly, heavily, but it wasn't locked. A person unacknowledged, unembraced, unnamed, still walked away as if he chose the ending himself. On the cold stone steps, Irene sat for a while, didn't cry, didn't scream, just breathed. The sky above had no rain, no sun, just gray, like the black stone once used to forge divine swords. So that's my father, Irene whispered. Fair enough. No one saw him off. No one called him back. But for the first time, Irene didn't feel empty. There was something in the rejection that made him realize he didn't need acceptance to exist. Every step after that felt lighter, as if he had just dropped a name. No longer son of Hisus, just Irene, a name he kept, lived, and called himself. Because in the divine realm, sometimes the only thing you truly have is yourself. And sometimes that's enough. If you ever hoped for an ideal father, well, sorry. But if you've ever been rejected, then you know it might be the beginning of something much stronger. That night, Irene slept in the forest. No fire, no cloak, just a few leaves too small to be called cover. He dreamed of Hisus, but this time the god was playing dice with a two-headed goat. He woke up to a roar. A wandering demigod, named Karnos, emerged from the forest's edge, drunk and furious because a mortal took a divine sleeping spot. Oh great, Irene sighed. I just wanted one peaceful night. But no, the universe thinks this is hilarious. Karnos didn't respond. He charged forward like an actor in a low-budget play with way too much CGI funding. Irene dodged the first blow, not out of skill but because he slipped. What happened next was instinct, or desperation, or both. Irene punched, one hit, straight to Karnos's chest, and heard a crack. Maybe ribs? Horn? Ego? Karnos flew 3 meters, slammed into a tree, and passed out with a grunt that sounded like getting kicked out of a video game. The forest went silent. Irene looked at his hand. No spark, no aura, just a hand. What the heck just happened? He whispered. No one answered, of course, except the owl on a branch staring like, that's a first, bro. Irene sat down, hands still shaking, not out of fear, but because part of him felt happy, not for winning, but because, for the first time, he wasn't weak, not pushed around, not looked down on. The next morning, as sunlight pierced through the leaves, Irene walked with his back a bit straighter. A demigod still lay there, breathing. Good. He hadn't killed anyone. But now the world knew he could do more than chop firewood. All right, Irene muttered. If he doesn't want to claim me, then let the universe do it. And the universe, or at least the small campfire glowing in the distance, seemed to be listening. From afar, a group was approaching, carrying flags, symbols, and a beast like a lion with wings. Oh no, Irene whispered. Don't tell me I just made it onto the mythical world's live broadcast. But yes, they saw it. And in this world, when you defeat a demigod, even once, you're no longer a nobody. You become the one who might. And that's enough to bring both trouble and hope. All right then, Irene said, with the voice of someone who hasn't slept in 3 nights and just drank resentment-flavored coffee. If I have power, I'll use it. Not to prove anything. Just so I'm not dismissed anymore. Wind brushed past his torn sleeve. No glory, no soundtrack. Just a teenager with scraped hands and an awakening heart. It wasn't a miracle. nor fate. Just someone finally got angry enough to stop accepting everything. And sometimes that anger is the only miracle you need. You know that feeling when things start to seem too strange to be a coincidence? That's when Irene began asking questions no one could answer. Not the cliché, "Who am I?" stuff, but more like, where did that punch come from? Because clearly he had just punched a demigod off a cliff. And before that, he'd only ever landed punches on firewood. No thunder, no booming voice from above, just a very real punch. Could it be my father left something behind? Irene wondered, then immediately scoffed. Yeah, probably just disappointment. But you know what's funny? We only question if we have power when we accidentally do something unusual. When you've lived your whole life being rejected, one abnormal moment becomes a crisis. Or maybe, I really am not normal. Irene started testing it again. Sneakily punching rocks, climbing rooftops, taking deep breaths and leaping. Didn't die, didn't break bones, didn't get struck by divine lightning. He slumped down, staring at his hand like it belonged to someone else. If I'm a god, then what kind of god am I? Definitely not the god of memory. No one remembers who he is. Not the god of healing. He couldn't heal his mother's pain. Not the god of war. He hates fighting unless forced. Maybe the god of those left behind. And if you're watching this at 2 a.m. alone, you get it. The world doesn't need you to have a title. It just needs you not to collapse. Irene didn't know if he had divine power, but he knew he wasn't going back to being that nameless wood-chopping boy. Instead, he walked on like every step was an experiment. Can I hear the voice of the wind? No, but he still closed his eyes to try. Can I summon lightning? No, but he still raised his hand to the sky because why not? You've done it too. Standing in front of the mirror, pretending to be a superhero. Sometimes belief doesn't need logic, just life and a bit of curiosity. Irene didn't know if he was special or just the only one who still believed he could be different. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start a legend. No trumpets, no gods blessing him. Just him, a dusty path, and a tiny voice inside saying, keep going. And what about you? Have you ever felt like something is burning inside you? Maybe you're not the child of any god, but who said you can't dream? And if you're still watching this, thank you. Because you and I, we're probably both still searching for something. Don't forget to leave a comment and tell me, do you think Irene really has power? Or was it just a lucky punch? And a heart that dared to believe in something no one ever taught? Some people save an entire village from monsters and get forgotten before dawn. Irene was that kind. No honors, no statues, no names in history books. But that night, when a creature crawled out of the forest, slimy, gray, and whispering the names of the dead, Irene didn't wait for anyone to declare him the chosen one. He just grabbed a hoe and charged in. No glowing sword, no golden armor, just the same hoe he once used to chop wood. And somehow it was enough. The villagers looked at him like they were seeing him for the first time. An old lady screamed, "He's the son of a god. He's Icarus." "No, ma'am, wrong god, but thanks for noticing." Someone else asked, "What's his name again?" "Isrin, Indra, Irene, that's your name. But don't worry, you only just remembered it yourself." What followed was the strangest week. Irene healed people with boiling water and forest leaves, patched burnt houses, and chased snakes from wells. No one declared him a saint. No shrine was built. But oddly, the villagers began greeting him. A child slipped him a roasted potato. An old man called him "my boy" for the first time. Not because they thought he was a god, but because he was there when they needed someone. And I think maybe that's the simplest definition of a hero. Not a crown or a halo, just being there at the right time. But one day, a poet passed through the village. Skinny hands, curly hair, and a loud mouth. He wrote down every strange tale except Irene's. "Not mythic enough," he said. "No royal blood, no tragic deaths. So, Saving people isn't dramatic enough? Being kind isn't cool enough? History is cruel to those who survive. Irene watched the poet leave. Not angry, not sad. He knew he didn't need anyone to write his story. Because that night, around the village fire, a few whispered about him. No rhymes, no epic songs. Just, he helped Granny Hella, did you know? He pulled little Lyra from the snake hole. And to Irene, those whispers were worth more than any epic. Myths don't have to be carved in stone. Sometimes they're written with muddy hands. If you've ever done something good without being noticed, you and Irene share something. Leave a comment and let me know. Have you ever helped someone? Anonymously? And don't forget, if you think this story is worth spreading, then give it a like, a subscribe, and maybe a quiet whisper to someone else. Because maybe all real legends begin like this. Someone not famous doing something small that no one else dared to do. No statue was built, no name carved, no tale recorded for Irene. After generations, only fragments remain, mixed with the wind and soot of old forges. The gods forgot. The people who lived with him forgot. The village isn't even on the map. But tonight you've heard it, and that changes everything. Because if even one person remembers, then Irene never truly vanished. His story doesn't lie in history books. It lives in a dream, maybe even yours, tonight. I wonder, are you still awake, or already dozing off as Irene picks up the rusty hammer again? If you're still listening, just leave a simple comment. I remember. We read every single one. Trust me, those whispers are never small. And if you think this tale is worth retelling, you know what to do. One like, one subscribe, and maybe a share to someone else who's ever felt forgotten. We don't need to be gods. We just need to be human who know how to listen. And remember, some heroes need no armor, just a campfire and quiet resolve. Irene never needed a halo. He just needed someone to believe he was real. And you did that, right now, right here. I know you might be listening at midnight. Lights off, a breeze drifting in. Thank you for staying till the very last line. Not everyone does. If you're asleep, may your dreams be warm with firelight. But if you're still awake, know this, you just revived a legend. Not with blood, but with memory. Irene was the forgotten child. But tonight, you're the one who remembered. Oh, and if you're still awake, leave a comment below. I really want to know, are you still up? Haha. Hello everyone. Tonight we're starting with a topic that's a little dark. A time when people lived with plagues, bizarre punishments, and dishes you definitely don't want to try. This is real life in the Middle Ages. No glitter, no illusions, just surviving a single day was enough to become a legend. Right now, I'll take you back in time to the year 1250 and turn you into a real European peasant. So, if you're not afraid of a few chills, don't forget to like, subscribe, and lie still, the night is long. Check if the lights are off. Adjust the fan breeze gently. And if you're using air conditioning, remember to pull over a thin blanket. Now close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let yourself drift back to a year when most people didn't live past 35. That's 1,250. There's good news and bad news. Which do you want first? Well, the good news is you just woke up. The bad news is you'll wake up like this every day, until one day you won't. The bed beneath you is not a bed. It's a pile of straw, bugs, and hope that rotted away last winter. No night lamp, no essential oils, just the scent of feet, goat droppings, and something you hope isn't human. Here, darkness isn't gentle. It's thick, heavy, and always comes with coughing, teeth grinding, and howling wind like God's own sigh. Planning to stretch? Careful, the rats might see that as a declaration of war. Your spine groans like a collapsing kitchen door, but no one hears, because everyone hurts just like you. That's not sunrise outside. It's the church bell acting as your alarm, and it never apologizes. A new day begins. No coffee, no morning kiss, just cold, itches, and despair. This is where we begin. Not with glory, but with truth. You might not survive a single day. Welcome to what they call a bed. Basically just a pile of straw infested with lice. Maybe you dreamed of a mattress last night, but this morning your neck aches like something heavy sat on it. There's no pillow. That lump under your head is a rolled-up sack, and it reeks enough to wake you instantly. Every time you turn, the straw crackles like someone plucking a small animal beneath your back. The most familiar smell each morning isn't bread. It's feet. Yours or someone sleeping beside you. You wake up to snores mixed with a cow's heavy breathing, because your bedroom is shared with family and livestock. If you smell something burning, don't hope for coffee. It's probably chicken poop steaming on the damp floor. You try to rub your eyes awake, but your hands are frozen stiff and still covered in last night's dry dirt. There's a red bite on your neck, maybe a bedbug, maybe a spider, maybe something you'd rather not know. Light peeks through the cracks in the wooden wall, just enough to show you're still wearing last winter's unwashed clothes. Wind sneaks through the gaps, brushing your legs like a whisper. Still alive? But should you be? A rat scurries across your face. No permission, no knocking, and you just sigh and lie still. Someone next to you coughs violently, but you're too tired to check if they're still breathing. You sit up, back aching like you were dragged across rocks, knees screaming from the bone-deep cold. You look around, your father's already awake, yelling at someone, usually your mother or God. Your little brother's scratching lice. He's not ashamed. No one is anymore. You don't look for slippers. Not because you're lazy, you just don't have any. Your first step on the floor is a nerve test. The ground's as cold as stone, and something squishy slides underfoot. The only warmth you feel is from the cow's breath beside you, and you quietly thank it for not kicking your head last night. You yawn, and the first sensation is a metallic taste in your mouth. A clear sign of some illness yet to be named. No clocks, just the distant sound of church bells, waking even those who wish to stay asleep. Your mother lifts the pot lid. There's nothing inside, but she does it every morning like a hopeless ritual. A chicken jumps onto your bed, not to greet you. It just laid an egg in your shirt. You consider complaining, but remember, you had nothing to eat yesterday. Keep the egg. Count it as luck. The morning light highlights every crack in the hut, and the bird poop that just fell onto your hand from the roof. A new day starts with you not remembering when you fell asleep, only that sleep was a battle. Every morning here isn't a beginning. It's a continuation of yesterday's exhaustion. You try to stand, legs numb, eyes burning, neck stiff, and your back protests violently. Everyone shares the same thought. Did I really survive another day? But you get up, because there's no choice. Here, staying down is also a way to die. You pull back the tent flap, or rather, the rotting cloth, and greet the morning with a chest-rattling sneeze. It's so cold, your pee could freeze into frost. Thankfully, you don't have to go yet. Your neighbor trudges past with a blank face, like he's walking into a morgue. The baby next door is crying, but no one soothes it, because that happens every morning. Across the way, an old man is shaving with a stone, hands shaking but still persistent, even if there's barely any beard left. No coffee, no morning news, nothing new. Every day feels copy-pasted from the last. You think of last night's dream of a place with warm water, clean food, and soft beds, and chuckle to yourself. Here, even dreams are tiring, and waking up is the bravest thing you do each day. You've begun your day in a world where surviving till evening isn't guaranteed. And like every day in the Middle Ages, you don't expect much. Just hope you don't die a pointless death today. If you just woke up and need to pee, condolences. Where you're headed has no doors and definitely no toilet. You cross the soggy yard, feet sinking to the ankles, to find a hidden spot between the pen and the fence. It's cold, the ground is wet, and something rustles beside you enough to make you pause. Could be a chicken, a rat, or another kid dealing with the same business. You pull your pants down, trying to balance, but the wind whips your back like nature's own punishment. No toilet paper, just leaves. Pray they're not the spiky kind. You finish and there's no tap, no water. Maybe wait for rain, or wipe your hands on your pants like everyone else. Hygiene is something you've heard in the Bible, but never seen in real life. And you never thought needing to poop could be the reason you caught a disease. But here it can. Next to where you went is the village's trash pile from last week, reeking like history decomposing. No one cleans it because no one thinks it's worth keeping clean. You walk back, trying not to look at your feet. Whatever you stepped in might make you lose your appetite. If you're a woman, going to the bathroom means sneaking, worrying, and sometimes being more scared than walking the forest at night. They call it natural. But this kind of nature just makes you miss a tiled toilet like a distant luxury dream. Bathing? Oh, here it's a public event, which means everyone sees, everyone feels awkward, so most just skip it. You don't get to choose when to bathe. If there's water, you bathe. If not, wait till next month. Sometimes you think, if being dirty is normal, then being clean must be the real oddity. No one mocks you for smelling bad, because everyone smells bad. Here, body odor is part of your identity. You walk past an old lady and have to try not to breathe through your nose. She hasn't for a long time either. The last place you bathed was the riverbank. No soap, but plenty of fish, and the occasional floating rat corpse. You remember that day. The water was crystal clear, until the kid next to you diluted it with a small, sad event. You hand-washed your shirt, scrubbing like you were trying to erase a month of filth. The result? A fresh mildew smell. Clothes dried in the wind don't smell clean, just less wet. And you wear them like it's a blessing. Someone in the village claimed to have used fireplace ash to clean themselves. Judging by the result, you won't try it. Occasionally, the church hands out holy water, and someone actually used it to wash their hands after pooping. Seriously, you heard about a nobleman who built a private pooping room with bricks. The villagers thought he was insane. While you're wondering about bacteria, a kid nearby just licked his fingers after playing in mud. They say dirt makes you live longer, but here it just means dying a bit slower, and no one cares anymore. Every toilet trip is a battle between dignity and accepting reality. Reality wins most of the time. No privacy, no comfort, just you, wet grass, and the fear someone might walk by at the worst possible moment. If you're wondering, what about at night? Congratulations, you'll experience stumbling through mud in the dark. Many have slipped during nighttime toilet runs. Some never came back, not from kidnapping, but from pure shame. There's a village corner called the place everyone goes but no one admits. It's the nameless toilet graveyard. One time you heard clapping in the bushes. Turned out two people were sharing a toilet spot. Kids don't care. They go right at the front door. Adults do care but still do it during rain. You once asked, why doesn't anyone build a private toilet? Someone replied, we haven't reached that level of luxury. Centuries later, people will build things called restrooms and won't understand how their ancestors lived like this. But here, in the year 1250, a toilet is a fluid concept in both the literal and figurative sense. You can try to adapt, but every morning, every urge, every rain, they all remind you you're never really ready. This is a place where you don't need paper, because you've lost the pride to stay clean. You just need to survive. You just sat up when the smell of breakfast hit your nose, and there's nothing in it that makes you want to swallow. In the pot is something resembling porridge, if porridge was reheated 10 times and forgotten on the fire each time. This gray, thick, slightly burnt, with a few strange bits, and you really don't want to know what they are. The bread is hard as stone. You could use it as a weapon if you hit someone. You try to break off a piece and it snaps in two, and the crumb bounces off the ground. No milk, no butter, nothing to make it better. Maybe this is the original bread. The child next to you chews a piece without complaint, only because they don't know what real bread tastes like. There's a water bucket, but villagers say, don't drink. Last time someone did, they didn't need to eat again. Ever. Instead of water, people pass around a jug of thin, flat beer, like rainwater caught from a leaky roof. You take a sip, it's bitter in the mouth, warm in the belly, and your head feels just as empty as the scraped-out porridge pot. Breakfast here isn't to fill you. It's to remind you hunger is still around, and today won't be any different from yesterday. Every clink of chipped bowl and wooden spoon is like a sad note in the symphony of malnutrition. You look around. Everyone eats. No one smiles. No one expects anything. Everything is just repetition. An old man eats and coughs at once. A piece of porridge falls from his mouth. You try not to stare. Your mother blows on the pot not to cool it down, but to blow away the moldy smell. Some chew without swallowing. They know the rest of the day might not offer anything more. Stomach growls are considered normal sounds, as familiar as a rooster's morning crow. An old lady nods and says, "Less burnt than yesterday." You're not sure if that's a compliment or surrender. The food smell clings to your hands, your hair, your clothes, and stays with you like an unwilling perfume. You try to finish your share, not because you're full, but to avoid being seen as someone living fancy in a place with no fancy. Fullness here doesn't come from food. It comes when your stomach is too tired to ask for more. Sometimes you wonder how people even survive these meals. Then you take another bite. Kids don't complain. They think this is normal. They've never known milk or real pastries. You see a child licking a spoon spotless, not because it's tasty, but because it's the cleanest thing they've touched today. A girl next to you wraps up a piece of hard bread, saving it for her father, who hasn't come home since yesterday morning. You whisper, "Anything for lunch?" And the person across just smiles like it's the funniest joke all day. After every meal, you don't feel better, just alert enough to start another day. Someone once said, "We eat to live," but here it feels like you eat just to prolong the exhaustion. The empty porridge pot is flipped upside down, tilting like the helmet of a soldier whose sword has snapped. You don't wash the bowl. There's no water, you just wipe it on your pants like everyone else always has. One rainy day, water dripped into the porridge pot, and everyone was glad. Thinner today, easier to swallow. And if you feel nauseous, don't worry. It means you still have senses. One time you spat out a mouthful of porridge, and your mother just said, "Don't waste it. Push it down. We'll cook it again tomorrow." No one throws food away. That's a worse crime than stealing. Theft might get you beaten. Waste gets you hated. You glance into the pot's bottom. The leftover is a blackened crust. Still someone's saving it. A child sucking their fingers. Eyes locked on your bowl like you're holding the entire world. You hand it over not out of pity, but because you can't take another bite. The child smiles, and you know for sure they'll grow up with a stomach trained to be empty. Breakfast ends like every day, with a growling stomach and the hope that lunch might be even slightly different. And you stand up, thanking your empty belly. At least it doesn't ask for too much in the Middle Ages. Think wearing old clothes is a vintage experience? Try living here, where torn clothes aren't a style, they're standard. One outfit, literally. From your birthday to your 10th death anniversary. The fabric is so thin you can see light through it, even when it's not daytime. Every time you sit, you hear a crack. Not sure if it's the fabric tearing or your knees freezing apart. Your pants don't have a front or back. All sides are equally muddy and smell like the cattle pen. Your shirt is stiff like paper soaked and dried on a smoky stove. The buttons are long gone. People use string. And when that breaks, well, let the wind in for ventilation. Shoes? If you're lucky, you have a pair with soles thinner than your faith in the gods. If not, you go barefoot, every step a negotiation with thorns, stones, and livestock dung. By now you realize human feet were not designed for the medieval world. Your head itches, not from dandruff, from lice. The only living thing here thriving more than you. You scratch until you bleed. They still crawl, still lay eggs, still live better than you do. Everyone has lice. Everyone knows. And no one cares anymore. They've got bigger problems. Some shave their heads. Some use fireplace ash. Some pray to gods. But lice don't listen to anyone. You rub your collar and see a dark streak. Not mold, but dried skin from yesterday's scratching. Body odor? Fascinating. Everyone smells different, yet all have one thing in common. None smell good. The thickest coat you have is actually the layer of dried sweat stuck to your shirt all winter. When it rains, clothes double in weight and triple in cold. Goosebumps. Anyone? One time you fell asleep in the rain. Woke up with your shirt glued to your back like a wooden plank. Peeling it off? You lost a layer of skin. But hey, at least the lice left temporarily. No one changes clothes. They patch, sew, and stack layers like a failed mummy rebirth. You look at your hands, cracked like a geological map, and your nails black as farmland soil. Sour armpits, smoky kitchens, moldy blankets, blended into a cologne no one dares name. Every time someone pats your shoulder, you flinch, not from pain, but fear their shirt dust will stick to yours. When you scratch your back and hear a pop, don't worry, that's not a bone breaking, just a scab snapping off. Some say if you survive winter without changing clothes, you qualify as a living monument. Sometimes there's a laundry festival, but only when it rains, rivers rise, and no one is dangerously sick. You feel oddly happy when you discover a new hole in your shirt. At least it's more breathable. But then you ask, why am I still itching? Because besides lice, there are fleas, mites, and things you don't want to name. You sit there, in what used to be a shirt, scratching your head by reflex, realizing the only things enjoying life here are the parasites. Now let's talk about dental care. Think toothaches are just minor problems? Here it's a slow, painful death sentence. No toothbrush, no toothpaste, no dentist within 1,000 light years. You've got a toothache, and from then on, every meal is a battle between survival and infection. Starts as a tingle, then a throb, then the vein swells, turns red, and hurts so bad you bang your head against the wall for relief. No anesthesia, no antibiotics, maybe a knife, but it's for cutting vegetables, and the shaky hand of a half-baked blacksmith. Cavities aren't treated, they're pulled. No numbing, no disinfecting, just a rope and a scream no one cares to acknowledge. Dentistry here is a death match. You win if you survive the first yank. You lose if the wound gets infected and spreads through your blood, ushering you into a gradual exit. You could meet your ancestors because of one molar. Seriously. And if you survive, the socket gets infected and leaves a permanent crater as a lifelong reminder. People don't smile much, their mouths full of black holes, broken gums, and breath like spoiled corpses. You don't speak loudly, for fear your loose tooth might drop mid-sentence. Every bite feels like the Grim Reaper leaning in. Someone tried rinsing with seawater and never spoke another word again. A lump under the jaw could turn you from healthy to corpse in 3 days. People back then didn't know what an abscess was. They just called it the evil swelling and started prepping a coffin. If you smile here, people might assume you're dying. And if you think, it'll pass after a bit of pain, then you're far too innocent. Because a toothache in the Middle Ages doesn't pass, it crawls into your heart and squeezes the last beat out of it. Welcome to the world with no dentists, where one cavity can write your obituary. And in times like this, divine intervention becomes the only hope. You'll pray for the pain to pass, but no one in the temple cares how you're begging. Around you are hunched worshippers, sobbing like the land itself is mourning. In one temple corner, an old man lights a torch with broken altar wood not for worship, but for warmth, and the fire flickers like his hope. The old seer mutters sacred phrases with great dignity, but no belief left behind the words. Yes, you could get dragged into a prophecy trance just for daring to look up at a broken statue. You hunch your shoulders, clutch your cloak, curl into a cracked stone pillar, and still wake up with frozen limbs in the morning mist. Your feet constantly trip over rubble scattered across the temple floor. Fingers grip the torch so tightly they go numb, trembling like they fear the flame might die in the night wind. No one remembers what sacred night means anymore. People just glance at you and mutter, another one begging for the gods to care. Now let's move to the moment the first silhouettes of the Dorian tribe appear on the hilltop, where the sun has just sunk behind a curtain of smoke. Sounds heroic, right? At least your house wasn't burned down? Wrong. By then, the fields looked like a sea of fire, just waiting for a spark to erupt into screams. No city stood whole, no village kept its roofs, and the concept of peace had gone extinct. You curl up in a rocky crevice, yet still can't escape the sound of hooves trampling your ancestors' graves. The Dorian soldier's breath reeks of grief and ash, blowing straight into the faces of the last fleeing souls. Wild beasts fled down the mountains, panicked by the flames and screams, from both raiders and refugees. Suppose you did escape, while screams thundered in your ears and the shadow of a raised spear loomed above. Firelight revealed the greed in the invader's eyes, and the glint of an axe sinking into someone's front door. Sounds like a war specialty, doesn't it? That's why, whether hiding in forests or beneath temple ruins, nowhere is safe from Dorian hooves in this era. One wrong step on the ash field, and you tumble into stone, wondering why you ever dreamed of tomorrow. Next time you admire a crimson sunset, remember, that's just the burning village reflecting off the sky. The elders said Dorian fire only stops when there's nothing left to burn. Sadly, they were right. You may have just stepped on a half-melted breastplate, with the stench of final battles rushing into your nose. One way or another, your heart won't thank you. Tonight, it'll throb in startled, uneven beats. A hoofbeat, a torch flare, or the chill when you realize the enemy just spotted you. You need an escape, but the wasteland offers only scorched weeds and blood-soaked mud. Tragic, isn't it? Living in a time when Mother Earth is reduced to a graveyard for shattered dreams of conquest. We started by staring at the barren grasslands, then chose to run instead of fighting a hopeless fight. Whether holding an axe or a broken spear, all you see is the enemy's shadow rising in the firelight. People fought not out of hatred but out of fear, afraid that not killing would mean being killed. In those days, every scream was a rushed goodbye, every night a gamble to see who would still be breathing by dawn. See someone fall by the roadside? Tomorrow night, that might be you. Clearly, the Dorian spears tonight won't leave anyone behind. The solution: run, hide, or pray the fire spreads fast enough that the enemy doesn't find you. Gulping down murky water mid-chaos is better than dying of thirst when the flames surround you. Some even believed bitter tree roots were better than falling into enemy hands. And yes, it was the enemy who burned the village, stole the grain, razed the temples, and pitched tents atop the graves. Imagine crawling into a rocky nook, listening to your house burn, too scared to even breathe. A full package night of smoke, blood, and tears. Feeling hopeless, trembling? Maybe because you just saw an enemy's shadow, spear gleaming in the firelight. Survival tactic? Silence, shivers, breath held, and hope the gods, if they still exist, look the other way. And if that doesn't work, brace yourself for being dragged from the brush like a beast from its cave. Now, if you hear a child crying in the distance, pray it's not your own. Now let's talk medieval jobs. Not a farmer? You'll still be swimming in animal guts, rawhide, and stench every morning. Forge, dye vat, tannery, each one just a step away from grilling yourself alive. Every deep breath adds a fresh coat of greasy smoke to your lungs. If you're a tanner, sorry, your smell alone could suffocate rats at the door. They say every trade is noble, but how noble can it be when the whole village avoids you due to weeks-old corpse stench? Think butchers have it easy? Wait till a pig's innards explode in your face. Some jobs end with a wash in ash, lemon, and despair. Meet a potter? He's halfway through burning his hand after opening the kiln in a wind gust. Meet a blacksmith? Hair scorched, skin peeling, fingers blistered, and it's only Monday morning. Any clean trades? Maybe, but probably only in someone's dreams. They said, labor is glorious. Here, glorious means you still have all your fingers. Kids learning trades get taught their first skill. Smell danger before something explodes. You could weave nets unless a fish takes a bite and leaves you with half a hand. Gate guard? 3 kicks a day, 5 insults a night. Night torchbearer? Good luck with the wind blasts, fire sputters, and burning hair. Who said glass blowing is artistic? Stand near a 1,000-degree furnace and see how long art lasts. The ox cart pullers smirk. At least they don't crawl inside pig carcasses. Textile stampers? Each press mashes a finger, and the dye stains for a week. Charcoal burner? Welcome to clothes that will never be clean again. Any clean jobs? Sure, if clean means coated only in the scent of death. Crematorium workers don't speak much, mostly because their lungs gave up long ago. Think craftsmanship is poetic? Here, every creation costs blood, burns, and chronic coughing. Even bakers aren't safe, mixing flour with pond water and hands that haven't been washed in weeks. One slip while carving meat, one overheated brick kiln, and you become a workplace accident. Trumpeter in a ceremony? Windburn, dust storms, numb lips, swollen jaw, all for a strangled horn note. No one asks, "What do you do?" Out of admiration, they're checking if you carry disease. On a good day, you might be burning coal, slaughtering sheep, and patching dung-covered clothes. The job chooses you not for skill, but because you're reckless enough to survive the week. Every cough brings out a mix of soot, smoke, and animal grease from memory. That's why these were called luck jobs. Bad luck, you die. Good luck, you die. A little later, when winter comes, you don't feel cold. You feel your skin stiffen in layers like bark. Wind creeps into the house from every direction, even with 3 layers of stone blocking the door. The first night, you can't sleep from the cold. By the third, your teeth are clattering nonstop. No fireplace, just white breath and kids groaning from frozen toes. Winter here doesn't come with pretty snow, only frozen mud and purple, swollen feet. Every morning starts by checking if you can still move or if you froze solid halfway through the night. Leaving the house isn't a concept. One more step and your knees go numb. When the water in the jar ices over, you start drinking the warmest thing left. Last season's flat beer. Kids huddle in the kitchen corner. Adults fake being full to save a spoon of porridge for the evening. You used to think cold was the problem? No. The problem is it lasts so long you forget what warmth feels like. Some homes use smoke to push the cold out, but it stings your eyes, chokes your throat, and haunts your sleep. Every gust of wind makes the walls shake like they're about to collapse. Cold doesn't kill you quickly. It wears you down until you can't even sit up. At night, the groaning isn't from stray dogs. It's from neighbors wasting away from hunger and cold. You bundle everything on top of yourself and still shiver like a leaf, because your shirt is damp, straw is moldy, and blanket is torn. If you think winter's torture, stay long enough for summer. As the sun rises higher, your home becomes a suffocating oven. No fans, no breeze, only flies buzzing around fermented urine. You can't breathe. The air is thick like wax, heavy with odors that make your head spin. Who sleeps in summer? Only those used to their heart pounding from dehydration. Every bead of sweat is a warning that someone might collapse in the yard today. Kids no longer run. They just lie down, staring at the ceiling cracked by heat. Adults reek right after lunch, and no one's surprised if someone faints on the porch. You open the door for air, but only the scent of dead rats and human waste wafts in. Flies land on your hands, in your eyes, and straight into the water pot you haven't even boiled. Every wave of the hand swats away dust and drags a few more bugs toward you. Summer isn't just hot. It's a never-ending suffocation that feels like living inside a tomb. When night falls, the heat doesn't drop. It just changes flavor, from burning to putrid. No one wants to sleep. No one dares stay awake. Every inch of floor oozes weird smells from the soil. And then you realize, every season can send you to meet your ancestors, just in different flavors of suffering. Home isn't a place of safety. It's where you count the hours, waiting for a death that won't be peaceful. No one sings in summer, no one laughs in winter. Only groans in the kitchen and broken snores on the floor. Touch the wall. In winter it stings like steel, in summer it sweats like grease. Try sneaking outside. Flies follow, dogs bark, and neighbors look at you like you've lost it. You can't breathe, can't sleep, can't eat, but you still get up before sunrise. Summer dust hangs like fog, sticks to your throat, and makes you cough through every meal. If someone dies at home, no one knows if it was the sickness or the weather. Cold makes your bones ache. Heat thickens your blood. Both dull your brain. You count rainy days like miracles. But when it rains, the roof leaks, clothes mold, and your feet rot. And then you realize, surviving all 4 seasons isn't normal. It's a personal achievement. When you think you're alone, remember hundreds of tiny creatures live with you, right on your skin. They don't knock, don't ask, and never leave. Every time you scratch your head, you're interrupting their banquet. You bathe, they don't care. The water isn't strong enough to wash off a 3-generation colony. You change your shirt, but they're still there. You didn't change your skin after all. Your bed is your fortress and their castle. You don't see them, but your skin does. Every bite leaves a mark. You knew the word lice before your ABCs. No microscope needed, you feel them through midnight itching. That cool feeling on your back at night? It's the damp floor and a bug crawling past. Every scratch doesn't just repel the enemy. It confirms you're still alive. Planning to catch each one? Schedule 3 weeks with no sleep. Everyone shares their body, some know it, others pretend they don't. No one admits they have lice, but one look at their old headscarf tells enough. Love is temporary, but bugs are forever. You grit your teeth not out of bravery, but because you're too tired to scream. One itchy bite becomes a third ulcer after just one restless sleep. A best friend may betray you, but bugs won't. They stick with you to the end. You may be too poor for shoes, but never too poor for parasites. Sit to rest, and a bug crawls up your arm like it's greeting you. Smell something strange? That's a cocktail of sweat, blood, and poop from nameless tenants. In the heat, they crawl faster. In the cold, they cling harder. You can shave your head, but don't be surprised when they return stronger in a few days. Bugs don't care if you're good or bad. If you've got blood, you're enough. You're never alone, especially when you wake at midnight scratching both armpits. Living with them isn't a choice. It's a survival rule. No one can get rid of them all, you just negotiate for fewer bites. No need for pets. The bugs have already filled the companionship role. If someone says they don't get bitten, there are only 2 options. They're lying or they've gone numb. And no matter how much you hate them, you have to admit, bugs know how to keep you from feeling alone. Mornings don't start anything, they just drag on what hasn't ended. You open your eyes not because you want to live, but because you haven't stopped yet. No one asks if you're okay. Everyone's too busy trying not to collapse. You work because stopping means nothing will be in your bowl tonight. You don't think ahead. Tomorrow is more blurred than a dream cut short. Hunger isn't as painful as pretending it doesn't exist. Someone beside you falls, you don't help, you step back to avoid being dragged down. Every step makes your legs protest, but you walk anyway, there's no other choice. Groans go unheard, they've become background noise. You don't need bravery, you just need to keep moving. Some days you don't remember what you ate, if you ate at all. You don't believe in happy endings. Just hope it won't be too cruel. Fear no longer has a shape, just the cold grip at your neck when you think of the future. Every time you look up, your neck aches, your eyes sting, and all you see is a sky full of dust. The elderly breathe slower, not from peace, but because their lungs are too weak to gasp. Children don't laugh loudly, not because they're well-behaved, but because they've never really known joy. You stop counting days, nothing's worth marking anymore. Someone still tells jokes, not to laugh, but to prove they can still speak. You work not to gain, but because stopping means losing everything. No one cries when someone dies. They just look at each other and wait their turn. You sit in silence at night, not to meditate, but because your legs can't stand anymore. The exhaustion doesn't come from labor, but from living hour to hour with no purpose. You don't say "stay strong" to anyone. Those words have lost all meaning here. When someone collapses, you just watch and wonder, why not me yet? No one has time to dream. Beautiful dreams cost more than warm blankets. You never sleep enough, not from being busy, but because even exhaustion can't bring rest. They call you resilient, but that's just another way of saying used to pain. You don't share what you've seen, because no one needs another tragedy. Your hands are calloused, not from work, but from going too long without being held. You try to stand tall, even though your back is curved from too many times bowing down. No one reminds you to live well. Everyone's too busy trying to survive. You don't cry at the sight of blood. Your tears dried up after too many losses. Every time you smile, it's forced, but you still do it, because no one can handle another hopeless face. You look at your hand and wonder if it's shaking from cold or fear. Dreams of a good day no longer come. You just hope today isn't worse than yesterday. No one talks about hope anymore. It was buried with those who once dared to dream. You don't hate anyone. Don't blame anything. Feelings are just another burden you can't afford. When night falls, you don't wish for light. You just hope no one sees you collapse. You keep living not for any reason, just because dying still costs more than enduring. And if someone asks why you're still alive, the most honest answer is, because no one's dug my grave yet. You leave the field at dusk, not because the work's done, but because you can no longer see your hoe. Every step home feels like dragging the entire day behind your legs. Your back aches so much. Bending to pick up straw makes your heart race. You wonder what you ate today, then laugh because you can't remember. The ache in your jaw makes every bite feel like another round of torture. You sit on the hay, not caring about the moldy smell or bugs hiding beneath. No one tucks you in, and the cold bites as if testing your skin's limit. The coughing next door is the only lullaby you get tonight. You roll over, trying to find a pain-free position, but everywhere stings, aches, or throbs. A child cries in the night from hunger, and you can't blame them, you feel the same. Someone says aloud, "It'll be sunny tomorrow," but no one replies, because no one needs false hope. You think of tomorrow, and every part of your body protests the idea. Someone still keeps the fire burning, not for warmth, but to scare away the rats. You lie there like someone who just crawled back from a battlefield with no victors. Wind creeps through the wall cracks, reminding you the cold is saving its worst for before dawn. You close your eyes not to sleep, but because they're dry, sore, and tired. Someone quietly recites names of the dead. You just hope yours isn't on the list. No one promises anything now, only silence as thick as mud covering every thatched roof. You breathe softly, not to relax, but so you don't wake the hunger curling in your gut. The sound of mice in the straw annoys you, but you let it go, because it's less threatening than reality. You don't hope for sweet dreams, because even in dreams you're still plowing fields. Your hand forms a fist, not to fight, but to stop it from trembling. Nightfall brings no peace, only the illusion that everything has ended. You once thought there'd be a day of rest, but no such day was ever called rest. Every night is another survival, and every morning is the sentence continuing. You don't complain anymore, not because it stopped hurting, but because silence is a habit now. Someone whispers a prayer, but it never seems to reach the gods. You lie there. No shelter, no hope, no dreams, just raw existence. Someone snores loudly, and you're grateful they can still sleep. Another day ends, and if you're still breathing, you've won the cruel game of survival. No one pats your back, no lullabies, no one knows what you've just endured. You don't fall asleep willingly. It's like being dragged into exhaustion's gravity. The night has no end, only interruptions by the light announcing another day of misery. You don't know if you even slept, but when you wake, you'll crawl back to work. And if you don't wake up tomorrow, no one will scream. They'll just take your hoe and carry on. At day's end, life isn't bright. It's silent, cold, and gray like moldy straw. You hug your empty stomach like it's normal, because it is. No violins, no peaceful dreams. Just a life eroding with every shallow breath. And if you still remember your name in the morning, that's a rare win worth noting. So you've lived another day, no one celebrates it, but at least you exist to see it end. Now you know, living a day in 1250 isn't a fairy tale. It's a collective lawsuit filed against fate. No white castles, no charming knights. Just gallows, open latrines, and lice crawling under your shirt. Think you'll be a poet? Fine. Just bring a hoe and a jar for rainwater. Every poem back then was a lament written between stomach growls and chickens screaming at slaughter. Think being a prince was easier? Enjoy the royal signature dish. Egalitarian dysentery. Even kings had no toilet paper. In fact, they didn't even have toilets. Think love was romantic in the Middle Ages? Wrong, love letters were written on parchment tougher than morning bread. A sweet kiss back then came with bad breath, rotten teeth, and a healthy chance of infection. Getting married? Congrats. You've just signed a lifetime contract with hunger, illness, and rats in the bridal room. And if you're a woman, don't bother dreaming. At best, you'll get to choose between hauling water or non-stop childbirth. A child? You think you get to play? Nope. You're gifted a hoe and the blessing. Grow up fast so you can plow. Mornings smell of blood. Noons scream. Evenings serve watery porridge. And nights hiss with wind through straw. You haven't seen hell, but it looks a lot like a moldy shack in 1250, with bugs and coughing. And if you're a scientist, congrats, you'll be burned for saying the earth is round. An artist, painting, you'll be called a witch if you don't draw Jesus with enough reverence. Want to open a coffee shop? Sorry, coffee beans haven't made it to Europe yet. Want to chill in the garden? Go ahead. Flies, bugs, and horse poop will chill with you. Still dream of being an influencer? Back then, there were storytellers in taverns, like streaming but with tooth loss if you messed up the king's story. In short, life in 1250 was a non-stop survival game with no retry button. And if you still want to go back, no worries. We've got a pile of straw, a broken hoe, and a louse named Hope waiting for you. You might ask, was anything good back then? The answer, if you survived past 30, you were the village legend. There was no social media, but gossip traveled faster than today's Wi-Fi. One sneeze at the wrong time could get you branded a witch. Whoever said, the old days were simpler and beautiful clearly only saw illustrations, not reality. Because medieval paintings couldn't capture the stench, the screams, or the blisters on your palms. Sitting with AC, a phone, and food delivery, saying, I wish I lived back then? Think again. Back then, ordering food meant picking it, digging it, or wrestling it from a chicken. Sleep early, rise early, it's healthy? In 1250, you slept from exhaustion and woke up because a rat ran over your face. So next time someone says, the Middle Ages were romantic, kindly hand them all 500 points above, because surviving a day in 1250 didn't require armor. Just steel nerves, an empty stomach, and the will to let go. If you're reading this on a device with battery, light, and Wi-Fi, congratulations, you've won at life. Still longing for the medieval era? Don't worry, outdoor toilets still exist at some bus stations. Maybe you don't have pearly white teeth, but at least you have a toothbrush, a dentist, and painkillers. Maybe you're stressed, but at least no one's accusing you of witchcraft for feeling moody. And if tomorrow you complain breakfast sucks, remember the 10-day reheated watery porridge of 1250. No one's stopping you from dreaming. Just learn the difference between romance and delusion. Conclusion: the Middle Ages were a fancy invitation to a very earthly hell. One day in 1250 is a crash course in survival, where even exhaling could get you falsely executed. So if you still want to time travel, good luck. And bring toilet paper. If not, take a deep breath, raise your morning coffee, and thank the universe you weren't born in the 14th century. And now, let's see, we move on to the next chapter.